I hate the term business development because I just think of a salesman who's out there trying to, sell and run. And that's definitely not what I'm about. It's definitely not what VDA is about.
Right.
I'm more into client relations, existing clients. I think it's easier to bring in a new client because you can pretty much say whatever you want to get them to sign the paper. The
Sure.
problem is keeping those existing clients.
Right.
And that's something that I've always prided myself on at PS Marcato and also here at VDA. It's very easy to lose an existing client. So we have our top 40, which I always email them just to check in and say hello and see how things are going. But believe it or not, that's really where 85% of my business comes from, is from my existing clients who I've been dealing with for the last 30 years.
Right.
They've been so loyal to me, and it's because I've always been there for them.
Hello, and welcome to the Elevator Careers Podcast, sponsored by the Allred Group. I am your host, Matt Allred. In this podcast, we talk to the people whose lives and careers are dedicated to the vertical transportation industry to inform and share lessons learned, building upon the foundation of those who have gone before to inspire the next generation of elevator careers. Today, our guest is Mike Balsamo, Senior Vice President with Van Dusen Associates in New York City. Mike started his career with PS Marcato, working summers as a helper, and he credits his early time in the trade to being foundational to the work he does today. Mike says responsiveness to customers is critical because that is how you build trust. Mike is also a champion of continuing education, knowing education is the key to opportunity. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I'm excited to be able to talk. It's been good talking with you before, but to really dig in a little bit deeper to your experience, your career, and obviously the insights that you have about the elevator industry. And so I'm curious, how did you get started in the elevator industry?
So I was sort of a lost soul, going to college after high school, and college just was not for me. And my father, he had worked for a large independent here in New York City, where he was the service manager right out of the Army for about 54 years. It was his first job out of the service, and that's where he retired from. And summers during college, during high school and college, I was a helper within the industry, learning pretty much about elevators, performing maintenance, more on the service end, not on the new construction side or the construction side. And I was pursuing actually a career in finance. And the owner of the company, I had stopped in to say hello, and me and him, from knowing my dad and whatnot, we were sitting and having lunch, and he told my father after lunch, I'm going to offer your son a position here in sales. And my father said, sales? No, he's no sales guy. He can never sell elevators.
Thanks, Dad.
And yeah, I mean, talk about vote of confidence. And so we spoke, me and the owner, and I accepted the position back in 1996 as an account executive. And believe it or not, I was there for 21 years. And
so tell me, before we get into
Sure.
to kind of the end of that story, your father obviously didn't see you as a salesperson. What was your initial thought? I mean, obviously you accepted it, but was there some fear of saying, yeah, I'm gonna go sell? I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, I just think I was young and I didn't care. And I said, you know what, I know elevators.
Sure.
And I remember while I was a helper speaking with some of the superintendents, building managers, and to be very honest with you, talking to them came natural. And I could see that I was actually working with older mechanics at the time, as I was only 16, 17, and I was speaking to the managers, and the mechanics didn't want to speak to the agents or the superintendent.
So you could see kind of that spot where you could fit, right?
Yeah, and I didn't see it then. I just felt comfortable doing it.
Cool.
So when I was offered the position, I was very intrigued and really didn't take too much stock in what my father had to say. So that's why I sort of went after the position and accepted it.
Sounds great. Yeah, and especially like you say, you trying to get through college and a good job comes along. It's like, man, why not?
Yeah, and college was not for me. And even my parents knew that. Today, it's, you really have to understand your child and what their limitations are. I know some parents say, my son or daughter's going to college to become a doctor. And I sit back and say, no, they're not, So my father knew I was not, I was pretty much after high school, I was done with education aspects that going that route.
Sure.
So
Well,
I
the
pursued.
formal education, right? I mean,
Correct. My
your education
education
didn't
never ends. I'm
cease.
learning
Right,
every day.
right,
But
right.
the
Well, and I've said before that the formal education system doesn't necessarily serve everyone, right?
yeah,
There are different ways to learn. I tend to be a pretty hands-on type learner, and I got through college, but I struggled. But
yeah,
and
I
I
know.
didn't feel any smarter when I got done. I remember being super scared about actually stepping into the real world and being expected to know something, and I didn't feel super confident in my abilities. So I
Yeah,
I get it.
yeah. So yeah, then I accepted the position, and then pretty much worked through the ranks. I was learning every day about elevators, new applications on elevators, new systems.
Right,
I had a nice foundation as being a helper. I mean, helpers today compared to almost 30 years ago is much different as far as what your mechanic expected out of you.
right.
Uh, I don't think, and that's something that we could discuss even further. I think that's like lost art is, how you pass down that knowledge and how do you train the younger generations coming in.
So
And
yeah, let's talk about that a little bit because I mean, on one hand, we're talking about education, and I feel like formal education. My dad is a state legislator out west, and he's kind of big. He was a school teacher for 35 years, but he tells me that college, for example, only serves 20% of the population. That there is a niche that's going to thrive in that environment, but he says it's only 20%, and so he's pushing for, more trade schools, which in my experience, it's like that used to be there, and I don't know if the education system has said, "Hey, we don't need that as much because we're just going to send everybody to college." But if 80% are not going to thrive in that environment, then you just curious what I mean if that's kind of what you were thinking as far as you
I
saying
definitely am. And believe it or not, my daughter is now in college. So I speak to a lot of her friends, and I'm very curious as to what the younger generation really sees as far as their future. And I could tell that there's a large majority that they're not cut out for college.
sure,
And I tell them, you're good with your hands, and they take interest when I speak about elevators, and not just elevators specifically. They're very curious about trades. The
sure,
problem is there's no one on the educational side that's informing them that that's even an option.
right,
And I sort of feel like a recruiter, I have to speak with them. I'm like, hey, listen, get a formal degree. You might be interested in elevators as far as the business aspect of it. Get a
right,
2 year business associate, get a 2 year degree, come out and work for an OEM or local independent here, wherever you locate it. And you don't have to be hands on as far as a mechanic, but you could take the business path too. I mean,
right,
we're always looking for operations managers, saleswomen, salesmen, any type of salesperson, account representatives. And it's not in the field. You're not getting your hands dirty. It's not hands on, but
sure,
it's another path to an amazing career. And students and the younger generation, it's like elevators. I keep on saying because that's what I'm involved with. It's like an untapped market when they're like, "What are you involved
sure,
with?" And I'm like, I sell elevators," and they're like,
right.
"Wow, explain that. What does that even mean?" And when you get into it, 8 out of 10 people I speak to, they're so intrigued by it and they're so curious. And it's, hey, Mike, they call me the following week. I'm interested. Can you set me up with one of the OEMs locally? I'd
Yeah.
like to talk to them about maybe going to school at night, getting a business degree, and working for them during the day.
Right.
So I think the education system is failing some of the students as far as not giving them trades as an option.
Yeah, yeah, and culturally, see, it seems like the minds of a lot of people, it's like they don't even think of trades, and yet there's some really really well paid trades. I mean, I have a friend from years ago that he took about one college class and is like, no, not going to do that. He now owns his own roofing company and does really really well,
Sure.
and I'm like, yeah, it's a great way to go for a lot of people. And like you say, whether they're learning the business or maybe they do want to get their hands dirty and maybe they do want to learn the technical pieces. There's always, in my experience as a recruiter, I'm always talking to company owners that just can't find enough talent.
It's so funny you said that because my friend owns a large plumbing company here in the city. And he says, I can't find anyone to work. And whoever I have, they're not here. They can't make a full week. He says, if I had someone out of college that really took an interest in plumbing, I mean, with overtime, He could be running my shop and he could be hands-on. He could be making overtime. He could be making an amazing salary, more than
Right.
what some of these kids coming out of college are going to wind up making.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he said, I can't find the people.
Right. Right. That's it's everywhere. So hopefully somebody's listening that will steer their kids towards the trades and to great careers.
Well, hopefully it's some of the union reps that are listening and they actually can start maybe a recruitment program or
Sure.
a guidance program where they can become a guest speaker at these colleges and talk about the trades. And like I
Yeah.
said, it doesn't have to be elevator specific. Plumbers, carpenters, electricians. I mean, you name it. The trades here, especially in New York City, they're doing phenomenal.
Cool. Yeah. 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 I know when I was in high school, it was before I got in high school, actually. They had a program where they would build a house, like the shop classes. I'm like, you're kidding me.
Yeah,
By the time I came along, they'd kind of disbanded that, but I thought that is brilliant, to
yeah,
teach somebody to build a house in high school.
amazing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. So you said you took the sales job, you did that for 21 years. What were some of the biggest obstacles, challenges to kind of stepping into that? I mean, it sounds like you just kind of went full steam ahead.
So it's more of we keep on honing in on education. It's learning the business. And when I say learning the
Okay.
business, I took I took more of the business path in elevators, but yet
Okay.
really have to understand the fundamentals of an elevator system,
Sure.
how it works, what's needed. Um, and it's basically customer service. So, I mean, if you have your product knowledge and your customer service, the career in elevators is actually very easy. And that goes for really any job. You have to know what you're talking about. You have to be able to guide your clients and customers, and responsiveness. I mean, those are the key factors right there.
Right. Right. Where do you see responsiveness showing up? Just I hear different things, right? But I'm not in the trade to know, exactly how that's working. But just curious, do you see certain companies losing out because they're not responding? And how does that affect you as on the consulting side?
So it actually, I see it as an industry issue right now, where where contractors are not responding to the client's needs. So it's great for us as the consultant because clients are
Sure.
calling us up saying, "Hey, I need your help. Can you call this contractor?" So it's just a way for us to build our relationship with our existing clients. So we sort of
Right.
act like an intermediate for them. And we're stepping in and we're really following up with the contractor to say, "Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Jones needs you to respond to these emails." And she's been sending them, he's been sending them for the last 2 or 3 weeks, and we get involved. We sort of really go after the contractor, not forcing them to respond, but we're on top of them where they do. And the client's really appreciative of us, and we sort of see that the job gets done or the questions get answered.
And what is it something you can do to, but if they don't want to respond, they just keep not responding. I mean, how do you
Well, if
change
if
that?
that happens, I mean, I'm upfront with the client, say, "Hey, listen, we've reached out to them 10, 12 times. They're not responding. I don't know what the problem is, but you might want to look for an alternate route for a contractor." And that happens a lot. Or we just get the phone call from the client saying, "Hey, Michael, I need you to bid out the service agreement because the contract is totally unresponsive." So
So,
sometimes we're left out, and the client will just call us and say, "Hey, listen, I need a new service contractor. They're not responsive."
all right. I've heard that it can be extremely difficult to actually get out of those contracts. So how does that even work to
Well, it depends.
rebid it? In other words.
There's different variations of maintenance agreements. I know as far as a consultant agreement, there is a 30-day out for cancellation for just cause. And we say just
Mhm.
cause because we don't want a contractor ever doing a very costly repair and then
Sure.
losing the building for no reason 30 days later. So we
Yeah.
want to make sure that there's a record of cause, and we're also giving a timeline for that contractor to be put on notice and correct the conditions. If he
Gotcha.
fails to meet two of those three criteria, then the client can cancel them.
Okay. Okay.
So we're fair on both sides. If the client's happy and they're going to keep the contractor, but the contractor's got to keep the client happy. If one of them becomes unhappy, then there's certain guidelines on how to get out of that contractor for both parties.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good to know. I mean, and it does seem like you kind of walk a razor thin line. I mean, obviously you've got to, you know, work for and with your clients, but you also can't alienate the contractors because, it's a partnership all the way across.
Correct. And listen, sometimes we're hired to do a maintenance contract, handle the bidding. Some clients come to me and say, "Hey, this is the contract which was given to me. I don't have the cost to enter into a VDA contract at this time. I'm going to sign with them. What do you think?" And we'll give a quick review, and I just look at the cancellation clause
Sure.
and the terms, and I just make sure that it's equitable on both sides for both parties.
Cool. Cool. So kind of the consultation, but hey, I can't afford to hire you full time, but
Right.
can you help me for a minute?
Correct. I mean, some of these contracts state that we're on a term of 15 to 20 years. I mean, I would never sign a contract with anything for 15 to 20 years. I don't think you would either. So I just advise my client, see if you could push this down, to a 3 or 5 year term. And at the end, either party has the option to get out.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's cool. So let's talk a little bit more. You talked about learning the business, and what were some of the things that you did early on to really, really learn the business? So when it comes to what you're doing now, obviously you've known it for a long time. You're able to walk, that walk the talk, as it were. Um, what in the early days really helped you to learn the business?
It was basically all the mechanics that I work with and doing grunt work. And when I say grunt work, it's what the newbies in the industry don't want to do. Painting machine rooms, cleaning the pits, being a parts runner, going back to the shop and finding those parts that you need. So this chemistry between helpers and the elder mechanics. And
Right.
when I say that, I tell all the younger ones coming in, try to anticipate what your mechanic needs.
Yeah.
Try, focus. Don't stand there with your hands in your pocket looking around aimlessly. Watch what he's doing because
Sure.
indirectly he's teaching you.
Sure.
So watch what he's doing, ask questions, and again, whatever he tells you to do, just make sure that you do it and make sure you do it to his liking. If you're going to paint something, paint it like you live there. That's your house. Make it a show job. Take pride in your work. Show your mechanic that you care. I mean, that's how you build a relationship with your mechanic. And we
Right.
have a lot of good mechanics in the industry, and they're willing to teach. The problem is, I don't see that the younger ones coming in are willing to learn.
Mm. That's yeah, that's a huge challenge there. It's like, okay, if you like you say, if you show up and you're not paying attention.
Right. Is this a job where you're just collecting a check, or you want this to be your career? You have to
Hmm.
decide, you know.
Yep.
And if it's your career and you want to own it, a lot of these mechanics are willing to teach you.
Right. Right. How critical was it to your career that you spent time as a helper before just coming in as a salesperson? I mean, it sounds
Uh,
like
it
you have.
that was very critical. That's my foundation. I mean, I'm not going to say I was the greatest helper, but I was a good helper. I
Sure.
was very good at understanding the systems. I'm not mechanically inclined or the best with my hands, but like I said, I was always the type that didn't stay around aimlessly. I asked a lot of questions. I didn't know if I
Sure.
was going to be on the mechanic side when I was a helper. I didn't even know if I was going to be in the business, but I was very curious as to what I was doing every day. So I asked a lot of questions, and whatever my mechanics did, and also, my father was in the business and I was working for the same company. I also didn't want any complaints to get back to my father that I was a bad helper.
Sure.
So I made sure that I was doing everything by the book. I was paying attention, I was listening, I was asking questions, and I was doing whatever they asked of me.
Right. Right. Um, who were some of the big mentors that you had? Who were some of the people that you felt like really took the time to invest in you?
I'd say I got to be honest. I work with about 50 mechanics at. I was working for PS Marcato. It's one
Yeah.
of the largest independents here in New York City. Still around. They've been around since 1903.
Cool.
And every mechanic that I work with really helped me in some way, shape, or form. Every one of them.
Awesome.
I mean, the
Yeah.
list
Yeah.
would be too long, but uh, I knew all these mechanics. And like I said, I mean, I was a helper for summers, but my father would do dispatching. I would speak
Sure.
to these mechanics since I'm 7, 8, 9 years old. They used to call the house and whatnot. And it's funny because now that I'm here at VDA, some of those mechanics that I work with in their 20s are now retiring out of PS Marcato,
Wow.
and they're coming here to be inspectors. So we hired one gentleman, and when he walked through the door, he started leaving. He goes, "I can't believe I know you since you're 7 years old." You know, it's scary, but he was one of the hires that we had that I worked with him on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and he was a troubleshooter for PS Marcato, and I learned so much from him. And
Yeah.
like I said, it was all the mechanics, and you understood where their faults were, and you learned what not to do, and but you
Right.
also have to take away all the positive because they all have positives, and you got to hone in on that, and you got to take the positive from everyone that you work with.
Yeah.
Everyone
Yeah.
different personalities and techniques. Just take the good from each one of them and just learn from it.
Yeah. Well, and that is truly the education process, right? It's not about a formal class necessarily. It's about learning from life, learning from the people, seeing the goods, the bads, and then choosing who are you going to be. What are you going to be given all these inputs? Because you can choose to do bad, right? You can choose to be lazy or whatever, but
Right.
then you you get to pick.
Very true.
How did that change as you moved into sales? I mean, I assume you weren't working, still helping as a helper, but you'd already kind of done that
Yeah, but
previous
believe it or
years.
not, when I first started in sales, you have a lot of downtime,
Okay.
and to mitigate that as a loss, I would actually go out with the mechanics still and
Cool.
keep on learning
Mhm.
and watch them. I would take them for lunch, say, "Hey, you're going to service call. I'm going to go with you." Not so much to hang out, but just see different problems,
Learning. Right.
understand different situations. And all that learning has paid off because believe it or not, even though I'm not a mechanic per se, I have clients call and say, "Hey, this is the condition I have." And I say, "You know what? Why don't you tell the contractor to look for this or that?" And 9 times out of 10, I nail the problem from a phone call.
Sure.
And it's all about learning.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. So still going out, but then obviously also having to incorporate, I guess calls, calling on existing customers and new customers, I assume.
Yes.
Um, and you were selling like service mod repairs, new
Uh,
like new
pretty,
construction or
pretty much, I was not involved with new construction. It was pretty much modernization, repairs, maintenance.
okay.
Those were the three aspects of, and that's local three here. That's the electrical union here in New York City. Local three, that's what they do. They're involved with mods, repairs, and maintenance. Local one is involved with all of that, including new construction and new installation.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. And so for 21 years, what kind of motivated you to leave after 21 years? That's a long time.
Good story. So when I first started at PS Marcato, the operations manager was a gentleman by the name of Robert Cousy.
Hmm.
Uh, he trained me and he was worked with me at PS Marcato for 4 years. And when he left, after 4 years, he went to VDA, and
Cool.
subsequently he became the owner here at VDA. And I've always stayed in touch with him. And after 21 years, I was looking for a change, maybe a
Right.
different aspect of the business, look at different, just a different perspective. And I was having lunch with Robert Cousy, and he says, "Why don't you come over to VDA?" And it happened to work out that way, and it was an amicable breakup between me and PS Marcato. Very tough one. I mean, I still
Sure.
consider it like family. But yeah, that was after 21 years, the business was changing, and I had grown. I think I just met my height. I was ceilinged out at PS Marcato. So I
Yep.
think by moving here to VDA, I had more of a path to excel.
Right. Right. And you've been at VDA how long now?
Almost 8 years.
Okay.
8 years, yeah.
It's awesome. And as I understand it, you've got all of the New York area. Do you cover like the entire Northeast, or what's kind of your area of responsibility?
So my area is the New York City metro area,
Hmm.
which covers northern New Jersey, New York City, and the five boroughs. So VDA is a very large organization. We are national, but
Hmm.
the metro area handles approximately 55% of our revenue. So
Wow.
it's a big chunk of our revenue. So I oversee it here with three others for this New York City VDA market.
Right. Right. And I think your part of your title is business development. So are you constantly, pulling in new customers along with keeping everybody else happy, as it were.
Yeah. I hate the term business development because I just think of a salesman who's out there trying to, sell and run. And that's definitely not what I'm about. It's definitely not what VDA is about.
Right.
I'm more into client relations, existing clients. I think it's easier to bring in a new client because you can pretty much say whatever you want to get them to sign the paper. The
Sure.
problem is keeping those existing clients.
Right.
And that's something that I've always prided myself on at PS Marcato and also here at VDA. It's very easy to lose an existing client. So we have our top 40, which I always email them just to check in and say hello and see how things are going. But believe it or not, that's really where 85% of my business comes from, is from my existing clients who I've been dealing with for the last 30 years. Um,
Right.
they've been so loyal to me, and it's because I've always been there for them.
As you say, it's mutual, right? I mean, they trust you, you trust them, and it's like,
Yeah.
I know who to call. You know,
Yeah.
it's cool. What would you say is the most critical skill in in what you do as a consultant?
Well, it's communication. Again, it goes back to that responsiveness. You could be the smartest engineer, tech, mechanic. The problem is if you're not communicating to your clients, and you have to understand the temperament of the business.
Hmm.
A lot of these boards and owners of buildings, they're very demanding people. And they rely on their management companies to obtain answers. If we're not giving them the answers and they're emailing us or they're calling us and we're not getting back to them, they're flying blind and it's making them look bad.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
it's responsiveness. So that's what I do here is, I'm like an email jockey. I get over 300 emails a day.
Wow.
They're
Yeah.
responded to within 24 hours, every one of them. And sometimes I don't have the answer, but I tell the client, hey, I received your email. I'm looking into this. I'll circle back within the next day or two.
Right.
At least they know there's someone on the other side that answered their email. And
Yeah.
that's what I tell all of the employees here at VDA. If you don't have an answer, just tell the client you received the email, you're looking into it.
Right.
Just make sure you follow up with them and give them the information that they're looking for.
Right.
So I think
Yeah.
that's critical. And again, that's indirect sales. I mean, the more responsive you are, the client feels that you are reliable and they're always going to come back to you. And that
Absolutely. Yeah.
you're going to get new business from that.
Yeah. If you had some advice for the industry overall, what would you say?
The industry overall. Um, Again, education. Um, the technology is rapidly evolving. So if the mechanics that are out there, and we see this all the time, these systems have become like iPhones. And the
Sure.
problem is we don't have real we don't have mechanical mechanics anymore. So you were able to walk in a room 30 years ago and actually see the problem on a controller and say that part's
Right.
broken. Let me fix it. I can put the car back in service.
Sure.
Today, it's microprocessor, it's faults, and it leads
Sure.
you down an area or a rabbit hole that you can have 5 or 6 different components which are failing. And now
Mm.
you're just swapping boards out. And a lot of this falls on the education between the controller manufacturers giving educational seminars on their systems and the mechanics wanting to learn about that. Because now, years ago, when you were on a given route, you had Otis controllers. That was the majority. Now, if you go on one route, you could have smart rise, motion, proprietary equipment, GAL, different versions of GAL, Thompson.
Sure.
It's very hard to understand every system. So it's continuing education. Like I said, is it a job or a career? If it's a career, enroll in some of these classes to understand the different types of controllers and the workabouts and how you work about the problems. And that's really how you become successful. Also, just basically, we spoke about this a while back, is treating the buildings as if you live there. Take pride in your work. Don't leave a messy lobby area. Don't leave greasy fingerprints. It's not okay just because you don't live there. Treat the location as if you live there. Take pride in your work. I know I said the mechanics will see that, but so will the buildings.
Yeah.
You know,
Have you
some
seen that change over the years at all?
definitely, definitely. I mean, we've seen some shoddy workmanship, and it's just
Mhm.
because no one takes pride. I mean, The type of mechanic has definitely changed over the last 30, 40 years. I mean, some of the mechanics I work with they would not sign off or leave a job unless it was to their satisfaction. And when I mean their
Wow.
satisfaction, they would do this on their own time. They wouldn't even put overtime in. But
Wow.
that's how much pride that they had. Their work was their signature, and they wanted to
Right.
make sure that it was 100%. And that's sort of fallen off a little bit. And that's something I think we need to get back. And that's all the trades. I mean, I've
Right.
seen some carpenters. You could tell an excellent carpenter, and you could tell some carpenters out there that you would not want doing your woodwork. But again, it's lack of pride, and that's something that goes noticed
Sure.
at every level.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I guess, we're kind of wrapping up with our time here, but, if you were to, and this, again, this may be a little bit of repetitive, but if you were to give advice to an individual coming out of high school, what, what would you say to them if they, maybe they wanted to come into elevators, where would you point them?
Um, Conversation would be has to have be had as to what do they really want to do. If you're really curious about elevators, are you looking to go into the field? Are you looking to go into the business end of this? I would start in the field first, see if you like it. I would not pause continuing education. I would try to get some type of degree at night. It's a lot of work, but I do know a lot of helpers that are in the industry right now. They're very curious about elevators. They came in with a pathway of becoming a helper, which they're doing now, but they're also going for an associate's degree at night in the city. So while they're in the city doing their day job, afterwards they go and they're trying to. It's going to take a little bit longer than 2 years, but they have something to fall back on. They're learning the
Sure.
elevators, and if they want to stay in, at least they have a business degree and they could proceed down the path of management, or they can actually stay in the field. I know one individual who now um, he's totally switched. He was taking the business course just as a fallback. He's now stopped that, but he's going for electrical classes at night. He wants to become a master electrician. He wants to stay in the elevators, and he's so appreciative. He's like, "Thank you for guiding me down this road because I would have wasted 4 years going for something that I probably would have never used." At least now I understand that there was a trade out there for me. I'm changing my career. I'm keeping my career path, but changing my continuing education. I'm going for my electrical license.
Cool.
So
Cool.
it's it's the younger ones that want to speak and they want to talk and they want to conversate. And like I said, it's the ones that have been in the business to really get out there and talk to these and guide the younger ones and sort of help them and guide them into making the right decisions. Because right
Right.
now, everyone's like, you got to go to college for the experience. Well, what is that experience? You have to look. It's short term. It's only 4 years. But when
Sure.
you get out of college, are you going to be able to? One, you're going to have hefty loans in some cases, and are you really going to be doing what you like? Hey, listen, if you love what you do, it's not a job.
Right.
So don't waste
Yeah.
the 4 years. That's even though it's a short window, it's still a long time. But get in and figure out what you want to do, whether it's a trade or not. But still go for the continuing education to back up that trade if you want to go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do know a lot of people who, they're graduate from college and, aren't doing anything with what they learned. And yet, to your point,
Yeah.
with a little bit of mentorship, a little bit of guidance, a little bit of, you know, conversation around, what do you really want? It could
Yeah.
probably save some people a lot of time.
Good friend of mine. He's went to college and graduated. Psychologist. He's a longshoreman. So,
Yeah.
go figure. You know, go figure. That's what happens. It happens a lot. It happens
Yep.
often.
Yep. And that's part of that, I guess back to education. Education of life, will throw curves at you, right? And
Yes.
I'm not doing exactly what I went to college for the first time, and yet it's all good. It works out.
Yep, it does.
Yeah. Well, Mike, I appreciate you being here. Is there anything you wanted to say as we wrap up?
No, just I don't know if you're going to put any contact info, but anyone coming into the industry or any type of recruitment avenues that we could go down. If anyone wants to reach out to me, I'm always here to help. Whether it's on a client side, elevator side. Like I said, I'm very big into the recruitment and trying to draw younger talent into the business. Any union reps out there that want to start some type of recruitment program, they should really be focused on engineering and electrical schools and try to get some good talent into the business, because it's something that we're lacking. And I think there's definitely a huge need for that. And elevators and escalators, it's just an untapped market.
Huge opportunity, great paying opportunities. So, and I say this all the time to people who get in kind of ground floor, like you, as a helper. I mean, you can write your ticket so many different ways. If you just get in, learn the business, you can go anywhere you want.
If you want to work and you put those things in motion, you can write your own ticket. You're absolutely right.
Yep. Awesome. Mike, thank you so much for being with me today. I appreciate it.
Matt, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You bet.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Elevator Careers Podcast, sponsored by the Allred Group, a leader in elevator industry recruiting. You can check us out online at elevatorcareers.net. Please subscribe, and until next time, stay safe.